Cattle, not pets, is a DevOps term. Sure, it's a bit grim if you think about animals literally, but this is really a parable about single points of failure. Hi, I'm Cubedrome, a small round man with many years of software development experience and almost no years of being correct about things. And we're going to talk about servers for a bit, after a quick word from our sponsor. Taking notes on a tablet is expensive, inconvenient, and frankly, emotionally exhausting. That's why I have a remarkable invention to share with you. Any regular notepad. For about $30, you can buy enough of these to last you for the next 5 calendar years. They weigh very little, feature mil-spec shatter resistance, instantaneous charging, and universal stylus compatibility. You can find compatible writing implements at any stationery store for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. It supports erasing, full color, and up to 80 megabytes of high-fidelity sketches, or 80 kilobytes of tightly packed notes. Available wherever fine paper products are sold, including, yes, your grocery store. No updates, no apps, just paper. Any regular notepad. When I worked at a university, individual servers had names and personalities. You'd log into Jupyter, and the exact details of the configuration and maintenance of Jupyter were the province of system operators. Specific servers hosted important databases, and if any of them started to have problems, the system operators would be paged immediately. Without Orion, people couldn't get their email. Without Mercury, none of the locks on the 3rd floor would open to employee keycards. Without Steroid, nobody could check their course notes. These servers were pets. They had names and personalities, and crucially, people really cared about them. At another job, I was the one planning the infrastructure. And as much as possible, I focused on automatically provisioned servers without names, only numbers. Either clustered and replicated so that one server could disappear from the set without harm, or load balanced so that one server could disappear from the set without harm. In that kind of environment, when S387 starts to malfunction suddenly at 2 a.m., what you do is not carefully nurse it back to health. What you do is kill it, bring up S388, automatically provision it, and add it to the rotation. These servers are cattle, disposable, faceless, and replaceable. Again, this metaphor is kind of gross about how it represents our relationship with animals. If I become a vegetarian, it'll be this kind of thing that's the culprit. Anyways, the cattle model of managing server infrastructure is, in my opinion, and the opinion of the people who coined the aphorism cattle not pets, the superior model. There's a lot less fussing with servers. And an automatically provisioned server is a more stable environment. You know, when you leave a computer running for years and years, and it develops loads of custom config, weird hacks, that thing you tried one time to resolve an error and never reverted, that creates an unstable environment. You never know what you're going to get with a pet computer. Sometimes something on the pet invariably turns into a single point of failure. Cattle, on the other hand, are easy to reason about, easy to replace, and highly redundant. Their whole environment lives in a set of automations kept in source control where you can monitor every change just like you would with the rest of your code. But the cloud is just someone else's computer. The cattle model depends in large part on access to virtualized or containerized server infrastructure. Somebody else is providing that, a control plane, an API, a server interface that abstracts the provisioning of new server infrastructure away from you. If you were to actually throw away a $20,000 server and provision a new one every time you noticed a small flaw or had to upgrade your system, you would be wasting a lot of money. And if you're in the position to waste that kind of money, get in touch. I drive a discontinued Toyota with mild to moderate body damage, and I'm sure I can come up with a better way to spend that money. So, in some server room, somebody else is handling a lot of pets. And those pets are providing a virtual system interface that we can use to run a lot of cattle. We're willing to make this trade-off because it's fair to assume that people running a hosting company are probably better at server ops than I am, because most of my IRL computers are held together by mostly screws, but at least some Scotch Invisible tape. The cattle model replaces a lot of operational and infrastructural work with just a little bit of vendor management. Full-on software as a service products like Lambda or DynamoDB or Mailhat or RocketTude are just cattle by another name. There's still a virtualized server interface being presented to you, managed by an external company, but instead of providing all of the flexibility of a whole operating system, they tend to do just one thing well. Be it run code snippets, or be a database, or send emails, or run a message queue, or just about anything else you might want to run as a backend service. In general, determining whether their price is worth the reduction in complexity of having them run as an external service is going to be up to you. I've run a whole MMO-style product for tens of millions of users for multiple years with a small staff of backend developers. It turns out the single most powerful tool in the ops toolkit is actually just a credit card. Sometimes you do need pets. Okay, so all of that abstraction comes at a price. Running and managing a lot of redundant servers through a virtualization interface provided by a third-party company is more expensive than standing up a box somewhere. Kubernetes is, in and of itself, expensive to run, in terms of both size and number of computers needed to make a production-ready cluster. Some large cloud providers are orders of magnitude more expensive than self-hosting. If you have access to in-house expertise who can run infrastructure for you at scale, then there can be a concrete savings to be had in housing some of your infrastructure on pets. Even if that means maintaining a whole team to run your own Kubernetes or Nomad cluster so that the rest of your company can treat their servers like cattle. The bigger you get, the more likely it will be that you need to start doing things that aren't supported by your abstract virtualized interfaces. You'll need to make changes to your server infrastructure that you can't handle easily with the tools provided, and you need to start filing tickets with your vendor. In fact, if you've offloaded a lot of your operations to software as a service providers, you're at the very real risk of discovering that they're less competent at operating their servers than you would hope. Suddenly, the promise of offloading your operations to another company can seem like a risk rather than a benefit. On the opposite end of things, the smaller you are, the more pets might appeal. As a hobby developer, I really don't want to spin up a new $5 a month VM or a handful of new $10 a month SaaS products for every stupid thing I put together. I pay for one medium-sized VM. It's been the same VM for almost a decade, I run everything off of it, and I treat it like a pet. That's, in my opinion, the most cost-effective solution. Flexibility and resilience are honestly a lot less important to me, day to day, than price, because the number of people who depend on services I provide from that box are like me and a handful of my friends. So, where do you fall on the cattle versus pet spectrum? I'm curious to know where you're currently operating. Do you manage a delicate, fussy pet server day to day, or are you herding a whole flock of faceless server? Cattle, not pets. It's a DevOps analogy that points out that your servers should be numerous, identical, and replaceable for easy operation and resilience. However, just like with actual animals, if you take a closer look, cattle are still just pets. It's okay to use either a cattle or a pet-based strategy so long as you know why you've chosen what you've chosen.